Muslim Street, and thank you for joining us this Sunday evening. I hope it is wonderful wherever you are, weather-wise, and all of that kind of stuff. You're not going through any hurricanes or typhoons or floods or anything like that, and it's pleasant for you, but I know that's a really tall order for the entire world to be homogeneously weather great. I know it's hard, but I'm glad that you could join us and glad to be with you. My name is Arthur Mobley, and I am going to be your host tonight. We're waiting on a couple of other people to join us, and they will be checking in with us, but we're going to get right to it. We got a full slate of information to share with you today, and we wanted to get right to it and get moving. Wanted to let you know that last week we had we had Dwala Wahid, who is a former Black Panther, and he was on, and we were talking about Assata Shakur, and certainly her passing untimely just recently, and we wanted to make those connections to let you know that we are always concerned from a Pan-African standpoint about the presence and the well-being of our people wherever they are in the world, and particularly those who are in the struggle and in the struggle for liberation of African people, as we will get there very shortly. We made some tremendous strides in the last few years, and that was some of the things that we were going to diagram. And today's program is about Pan-Africanism as well as its performance and where we go from here in a new African horizon and a new opportunity to really look at African unity as being viable finally in a really good way. Now, it hasn't been since the 80s since we've looked at African unity in a viable way. Of course, in Southern Africa, we had some very progressive movements there leading into the abolishment of apartheid in South Africa. But Zimbabwe became a major factor after Angola, Mozambique, of course, Guinea-Bissau had been liberated and freed from colonial clutches and tyranny, and became independent and became self-sustaining. Dr. White has joined us. Good evening, brother.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, brother
Yeah.
Arthur Mobley, my brother from the West Coast. How you doing?
I'm doing great. It's great out here on the West Coast, so I understand. Now, you on the East Coast, right?
Absolutely. The dirty South, as they call it.
Oh, the dirty
Florida,
South. All right,
Orlando,
all right,
the
all
home
right.
of Mickey Mouse. Yeah, that's what it is here. The politics is Mickey Mouse. So yeah, that's where we
Yeah,
are.
yeah. We got some mouse traps out and some poison cheese. We're gonna get rid of these folks that don't want to play right, But I understand what you're saying. I got the inference. But yeah, I was getting ready to get into a little bit of
Yes, sir.
COINTELPRO.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
We had talked about COINTELPRO last week in the wake of Assata's leaving us, and of course, her involvement with the Black Panther Party really, I think, mysticized a lot of African American women and their involvement in the Panthers. Of course, Angela Davis was involved as well, and a number of other great women across the country who were really warriors for liberation and making change, progressive change in the country. And a lot of it was framed erroneously by the authorities as being a major threat. And J. Edgar Hoover classified African American liberation as being the number one threat to American national security during all during the 60s, all during the 50s and the 60s, all the way up until September 11th. We were considered to be the number one threat to national security in this country. I mean, with the Dr. Kings and the mild-mannered kinds of things that we could actually achieve here in America, you would think that that would be absolutely preposterous given, what was going on in many of the cities with some of the real gangster nonsense that was going on, and some of the drug wars and some of the things that did not pertain at all whatsoever to African Americans and what was going on in our communities, but was happening in other people's community. Organized crime of all kinds was flourishing, but we, just organizing and behind Dr. King and Panthers and their breakfast programs, we were characterized as the number one threat to national security in the country, which I kind of look back and just marvel and shake my head because it was a shame. But we really have to understand the fear that must have been in people's minds to calculate, such a structure. So they launched COINTELPRO, which was the counterintelligence programs, and it was an acronym for that. And while that was raging, while they had the counterintelligence programs, which were really responsible for everything, probably, and I'd say probably with kind of a tongue-in-cheek, but probably responsible for the deaths of Malcolm X, the assassination, I should say, of Malcolm X, the assassination of Dr. King. Of course, these people were being trailed. And while we knew of Malcolm X and we knew of Dr. King, the COINTELPRO program out of the FBI was really targeted and designed to destroy what J. Edgar Hoover had perceived in his own fantasy of being a Black Messiah. And he felt it was his responsibility to take out this Black Messiah before they became effective. And so the assassinations of Dr. King and Malcolm X were just the tip of the visible iceberg of what was being done against African American men during the 60s and 70s and into the 80s as well, as these programs continued all the way until today. But what we didn't know was that there was also a sister program of that, and it was called the Ghetto Informant Program.
Right.
The Ghetto Informant Program was an effort by the same forces, the government, your tax dollars, hard at work, trying to do something that we can't even imagine and discuss right now. But they were paying people. They were going into barbershops and beauty parlors and going into any kind of churches, workplaces. They were infiltrating funerals. They were paying people to watch and inform on people. Kind of goes back to the days of slavery and the meritorious manumission days, when that term was coined. Meritorious manumission, for those of you who don't know, was a project during slavery where you were granted your freedom, or at least some semblance of freedom, by, and that's where the meritorious part came in, by informing on other Black people. If you knew of maybe a slave insurrection, or people were going to run away, and you came and told the master that, hey, boss, they're gonna be out of here tonight. I heard word, and you could get
Mhm.
points for that. You could also get points under the meritorious manumission program for rescuing a white person or saving a white person's life or saving the property of a white person. These were all subtly designed
Yes.
to do really psychological as well as physical, have a physical impact, but do some damage at the same time, and certainly curry favor. Well, those programs continued all the way through this ghetto informant programs that were really run between 67 and 73, 1967 and 73. So some of you might have
Yeah.
been affected by those programs. Maybe somebody was hurt by those programs, were locked up and incarcerated forever and a day because of those programs. And some of you might have been rewarded for those programs. And shame
Let me
on
answer
you.
that. That's right. I agree with you 100%.
Mhm,
Sometimes many of our people ask, well, how could this be? Why would the government do such a thing? Because,
mhm,
this government, according to them, it's a loving government. It's a benign government. It's a government that really aids the suffering and the underclass. But in reality, the United States government has always wanted a black underclass. If they can continue this policy whereby the African American community is a subjugated community, is a community that is begging politically, socially, and economically from white society, and that's his aims and wishes. So therefore, when they try to stop people, and I go back a little bit farther with the development of the Bureau of Investigation before it became FBI, all right,
mhm.
whereby they started to go after um,
Marcus.
blacks. Yeah,
Mhm,
Marcus Garvey, Sinclair, Lady Queen in Queens. I mean,
mhm,
in New York, and
mhm.
other prominent individuals. Paul Robeson, a whole bit, Medgar Evers, all of those things. They did everything to undermine our economic and political and social growth
Mhm.
by several means. So now, as you're talking about, they having these operations, they're still in effect, right? I mean, you,
Yeah,
you have Department of Justice that has the peacekeepers.
they're not defunded. They're not
No, not at
terminated.
all.
Mhm.
They not at all. They're right in our midst. And what's so strange to me, Brother Arthur, is that they work right within our community, within our churches, within our organizations like the NAACP and the National Action Network and several others. And the leadership know who they are, but they
Mhm.
will not say a mumbling word to dismantle this type of activity that is destroying our base.
Yes, absolutely.
That must be stated. Yes.
Absolutely. And, the information wars are in high effect right now. We are in a battle just to get information out because, of course, this particular administration, as well as other administrations before it, have been trying to maintain that ideal that you just outlined by depriving us of information about ourselves, about our own history, about their own history and what they've done. So they're in the process of trying to erase this history. And that's why we need redouble our efforts to make sure that the lines of communication stay open and that people know where to look, when to look, and how to look to find the kinds of information that we're sharing right now. Which brings me to the subject of TikTok
Wow.
um, and social media. You know, social media right now is what we're using today, and these platforms are endangered. They're being endangered by consolidation, and in another life. I was the Western Regional Director of the National Black Media Coalition. And it was the National Black Media Coalition that really charged itself with trying to make sure that Black people were able to own and operate broadcast facilities and have broadcast licenses for radio and television. And we worked very feverishly to expand the reach of African Americans in media. I started with the organization back in the 70s, and began to work mostly with the legal arms of the NAACP and others to facilitate challenges to media operators that were in error with what they were doing. We were also trying to expand the ownership roles of African American media, and we were very successful at that time in getting a lot done, so that we had more licenses. We had ownerships of the first African American television network affiliate in WHEC in Rochester. It was owned by an African American lawyer named Reagan Henry in Philadelphia there, Rochester, but he was out of Philadelphia. We had a number of stations across the country. We increased the ownership of Black radio stations, FM stations, and AM stations across the country. And that was something that we did when we had an FCC that was actually governing what was going on in the media. Now, when the technology changed, cable came out, and then we got the dish communication kinds of satellite direct operations, and then we morphed into what we now call social media. The reins and the regulatory status of organizations like the FCC backed down quite a bit, and they became less of a factor. And the reason that they did was because broadcasters, and I was among them by then because I'd actually got into ownership and being involved in broadcasting myself, they had really started crying the blues falsely and essentially trying to make the government think that they were under duress from all of the new technology. Because cable was there and because satellite was there, suddenly their licenses were going to become less valuable because of diversification of the audience, which was true to a degree, but not so true in reality, because they always control the content, and they still control the content. The networks still control the major lion's share of the content that's available that we see in reruns and over and over and over and over again. So it was kind of a ruse, but it worked. And the FCC loosened its reins. What they were really trying to do was target organizations like the National Black Media Coalition that was going in, challenging their licenses from a legal standpoint. And when they did that, that put them under a lot of duress to make substantive changes. And also, what it allowed was a loosening of some of those licenses so that Black people could purchase and buy those stations. Because you didn't even have an opportunity to even buy a station back then. You got a question, I know it.
Yeah, one of the things that's so interesting is the importance of the Black media and getting news on it. Even before then, I remember in the late 1950s, you had Robert Williams, the head of the NAACP in Monroe, North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And the FBI, going to the FBI, stated that he was the most wanted and the most dangerous Black man in the United States. He had to flee to Cuba. And after that, he developed in Cuba something called the Radio Free Dixie, which was an underground radio program.
Mm-hmm.
We used to call it back in the day the pirate radio system.
Right.
And before we had licenses, We had to do it this way because it was our news, it was our cultural expression, and it was hitting hard.
Did
Um,
you did you get a chance to hear some of those broadcasts from
yes,
Robert Williams out of Cuba, the voice of
yes,
the?
I did.
He's almost like a VOA in reverse, the voice of America in reverse, but it was the voice of
I'm
Black America, and
sorry.
he is definitely one of my heroes.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Can you hear
Yes,
me?
I mean the man was hitting hard. Yes,
Okay.
and, and this type of thing was very important because it helped to not only create a revolutionary mind within our community, but it kept us abreast and kept us connected to the global movement because
Mhm.
our movement is just not in the United States, right? It
Right.
is throughout the world. You're part
Absolutely.
of this fight against colonialism.
Absolutely.
You see, and so when you came along and developed the new avenue, it's just what? It's just the continuation for Black news and Black expression.
Absolutely. We call it the drum beat.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Singing in Africa,
Well,
where
you know,
our, go ahead.
what's so sad now though, in Tallahassee, I cannot name I think it's out of Tallahassee, Florida A&M University. They have a Black radio station. They call it
Hmm.
Black. It looks
Hmm.
Black. The people sound Black, but it isn't Black,
Oh,
right?
okay.
It's
Hmm.
owned by Indians,
Hmm.
actually, who owns on the Jacksonville Jaguars football team,
Okay.
and they are really pushing their agenda, even though it's under a Black face. So therefore, our readers, our listeners have to understand that people like yourself who are the pillars are being attacked. All right. And they're using every means to undermine us in reference to our news.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay?
Yes, and you know, even though we have many stations now across the country that are not African American owned, but are African American programmed, they
Yes.
have they create this veneer of programming to make you assume that this is a black station. We got a black station here in town. We got an outlet for information, and we can really get our thing done. And then when you run into the real ownership structures, you find that you don't have that political freedom that you would have if there really was a black licensee and a black owner of that property. And that's why we have to continue to fight for ownership of broadcast licenses and broadcast facilities so that we can have that unfettered access and freedom of speech and freedom of information flow that goes back to our community. And it doesn't need to be tainted by anybody else. How many African Americans would own Indian stations,
Right.
Indian formatted stations, or country and Western stations for that matter, or all news talk stations? And I say this kind of with tongue in cheek because I've owned all of those kinds of stations. I've
Go
owned
ahead, Black man.
country and Western gospel and news talk stations. I was actually manager for the Air America stations that operated when they shifted over from Air America. I was general manager of the predecessor operations there for quite a while, and people like Rachel Maddow and Randy Rhodes and Schultz and Ed Schultz and Mike Malloy. Those people actually worked for me. So, and again, it's just a product of the experience that I had developed from the National Black Media Coalition and the experience that I had gained in being involved in media for a long time. You listen to the Muslim Street, and the Muslim Street is brought to you every week, and it airs at this same time. So you know where you are, you know what you're doing. Look at the clock and just write down what time it is, and you'll know we'll be here at the same time next week. So uh, hopefully that works out for you. But Dr. White, I know that you had a few things that you wanted to share as well. I've got several other things that I want to run through as we get back to the African continent. But jump on in here and share some of your good wisdom. You have a couple of books that you've written,
Oh,
and
yes, yes, yes. I think, as you know, the newest book is called Blacklisted: The Price for Speaking Truth. Yesterday we
mm,
had a nice um, book signing, but we believe that this is one of the most important books of the last 5 years. As Cornell West put it, the manuscript talks about one, how there has always been an MO to undermine the African American voice, to isolate us. And that blacklisting can mean destroying your career, destroying your character, destroying your business and your
mm,
money making system, to actually putting you in jail, to actually killing you. Because again, the biggest threat to this system is not the
you're breaking up a little bit there.
Palestinians, and it's not the others, it's the African American in this game, blood and sweat in this game,
Mm,
and we have been resilient. There's no other community has been more resilient than the African American, and especially the African American male. So that's important. One of the things I just want to touch on a little bit that I found that was interesting, and I'm going to pick on my our engineer brother Lance. A couple of days ago, lawmakers from Ghana had a chance to visit Russia, and it was a man by the name of Mohammed Ibrahim and another person by the name of Emmanuel Agzinko. And what's taking place now is that Ghana is beginning to move away from Western suppliers, Western benefactors. They went to Russia to look at issues of AI development, agriculture, economic trade, and military trade. I thought it was quite interesting because, well, Ghana is part of that Sahel area, right? And we see that countries like Burkina Faso, Mali, Nigeria has also moved away from Western thought, and they have actually cut off and ties with France. So I see this as a great development of the strength of Africa in that region becoming more and more um, self-aware and following their own concept of self-determinism, and they are creating a new narrative. And right now, our President Trump and Congress, they're hot as a firecracker. They don't know how to respond. So they're running like a chicken with no head because they never prepared for this type of Russia, type of Africa. What's also taking place that has been completely ignored in the media is that there is a sister by the name of Zakiswa Warren. She's from South Africa. She lives in Kenya, and she was part of this global flotilla off the coast of Gaza to give humanitarian aid. Well,
mm,
what happened was the Israeli government basically kidnapped her, and now
mm.
she's in their custody, and they refuse to let her go. They're arguing that she is a gun runner. Now, South Africa is saying that if you don't release this, it's going to be a hell to pay. So now we're beginning to see not just a verbal and a diplomatic conflict between Israel and Africa, but we may begin to see some conflict. All right, that's very, very real because this lady,
Absolutely.
I mean, she's an activist. She has done a lot of things. All right, and we see that taking place, and that's been completely locked out of the news. completely locked down. And that's something that we
Absolutely.
have to look at. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I knew about the flotilla, but I didn't know about this incident. So I appreciate you sharing that and bringing it to everybody's attention. And we'll have to, talk a little bit more about the flotilla and the efforts to break, run the blockade to Gaza to bring food and medical supplies. No guns. Nobody's taking any guns in there. So it's a totally bogus and nonsensical charge. But I can see the authorities in Zionist Israel attempting to float that kind of an idea because they feel like that's all they can do. That's what they stand on.
Yeah.
But certainly, this flotilla is pretty. Uh, it's numerous in the number of boats. I think it was something like 400 boats
Yes.
that were on their way to Israel this time. I remember when Alice Walker,
Right.
author of The Color Purple, she had gone on a little bit of an effort to do the same thing, and this was about 5, 6 years ago, and she was roughed up and really seriously scarred by that incident. I really felt bad, that one of our sisters who had done so much in the community at such a high profile level, she put all that on the line to try and do the same thing. So we have to continue to talk about these people and make sure that they're amplified. But I'm really dismayed. And we were talking about TikTok and beginning to kind of launch into what's going on with
Yeah.
TikTok. A lot of young people are utilizing the TikTok format to make really good money.
Yes.
And yeah, there's some
I one right now, Miss Harper. She's part of that group.
Okay, okay, we'll have to get her to kind of address
Yeah.
this a little bit and maybe testify a little bit on what's going on TikTok, so that we can bring the point home that we want to make. But TikTok is an important element to a large economic base, 75 million users here in the United States. Now, that was built basically by a company called ByteDance. They are a subsidiary of a Chinese company. And because it is a Chinese company, again, the only thing that I think people in this country try to sequester more than African American thought and opinion is anything that comes out of China.
Right.
And so they've been railing against TikTok. But sister, could you tell us a little bit about TikTok? I know you got
Well,
something to share with
okay,
us.
are you able to hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, so the word that you're looking for is to monetize. So basically, when people when people like your posts, when they comment on your posts, and
Hmm.
basically converse with you on different topics, you tend to see this more or less on podcasts, broadcasting channels, and even going back to how they used to sell the products, and you'll have the people call in to talk about the product and raise
Yeah,
money and fundraise. It's just
print
like
money.
correct, exactly. So you have, I wouldn't even say it's amongst the young. I would say more or less it's a generation and people that have actually something, they have something to say which carries substance. A lot of people are turning away from the surface topics. They want to address the things that are happening systemically in other countries, in our country, in our cities, things that go unnoticed, history that's trying to be covered up, history that's trying to be taken out of the schools and things like that, you know? And
Great,
so
great.
you have people who want to protest and actually make a difference. I think a term that we used way back when in the 80s and 90s, a revolution, so to speak. They actually want to make a difference. Mhm.
Absolutely. And, certainly social media was groomed to do that. They were saying, hey, this is alternative. This is, you don't like the regular media, you can't get on the regular media, you can't get on the FM stations and the TV stations and the networks and the cable channels. Here's social media, and you can do it yourself. You know, you can put a podcast up and you can start a station and you can just be on the air all by
Ex-
yourself, you know. Uh,
Exactly. And the other fact
Are
is
you?
people are tired of being censored for everything that they, for every little thing, whether they're addressing their personal lives, things that they see
mhm.
on a day to day. If it doesn't agree or align with what society or what the government, you typically see that even in programs like this, like YouTube, in the comments or on TikTok. If it doesn't agree with the assignment or the agenda, they'll try to silence it out. And Blacklist is the book. It kind of highlights and addresses some of those things. And
Mhm.
Dr. White can expand upon that.
Yeah.
So Ms. Harper, so are you an influencer, and are you making money that way too?
I used to, my page is, I'm able to make money from it, yes, but I don't utilize it solely for that purpose. Um, if I'm doing a fundraiser or if I'm contributing to a cause, yes, I will. But mainly I use it because in some places where we have to discuss important things, they like
Mhm.
to censor it or block it out as a whole. And quite frankly, I don't have time for that.
Yeah.
We want to talk about things and again make a difference. So yeah.
Well, absolutely. It's not just talking about things, it's also having the ability to make money. And like I said, I know some TikTok least thousandaires, 100,000aires. You know, I don't know a millionaire yet, but I'm sure that I know that there are a lot of them out there. And so when they were threatening to
Well, Mr.
take,
Mobley, if I may,
Mhm.
the people that I see making millions is typically in the podcast field, and if it's on TikTok, it's about people with animals or in the makeup industry or doing comedy.
Mhm.
I don't typically see that with those who are having discussions and talks about things that are affecting people on a day to day, unless it's generally for a fundraiser.
No, no. Actually, there are a lot of people who are making a lot of money and have livelihoods, have quit their day job, and they don't do anything but TikTok. So, I mean, I applaud them. You know, I think it's great if you can make that work. And when they threatened to take it off the air a couple of years ago, you remember the uproar. People were really upset. They were upset because it was going to affect their livelihood. And some of I mean, we got a number of listeners who are standing by online, and they're, uh, you know, listening. And I want us to be more interactive and develop a more interactive capacity so that we can talk to some of them as well. And I know that our producer, Lance Skirb, is all the way in Accra, Ghana, and he's running this program from there, which I don't know how he does, but it's just amazing. You
Brilliant.
know?
He's brilliant. I mean,
Thank you,
Lance
thank you.
admitted he was doing it, and in Pine Hills, a section of Orlando. I mean, he's he had a national audience. I mean, they brought him on. What was it? CNN, BBC, or something?
I know he's famous. You know, I mean,
He's an unassuming, famous man, and we
absolutely,
thank God for him.
Thank you
absolutely.
So,
so much. Thank you.
so one more thing I want to bring up, brother Dr. Mobley, is that the IMF, which I find that is very interesting, the International Monetary Fund came out yesterday that they're not going to give Senegal $1.8 billion that they normally give to that country. And the
Mhm.
president, he said, that's fine. That's well and good, because under my administration, I found that we owed the IMF over $12 billion anyway, and the inflation rate was just astronomical. So we don't need your money. All right, we're going to focus heavily on our gold. We're going to take back our fishing rights off the coast of Senegal, and we're going to do it our way. Again, those things are not being said. I was so happy to really throw his nose or a thumb up against the IMF, which has been the organization that has really undermined the African and the Black world economically.
Absolutely. And, the President Faye of Senegal is one of those people who has recently come into the political front. Young brother, very dynamic. Right. And certainly, we hear about Ibrahim Traoré all the time. And I think we talk about him almost too much. And I say that only that it makes him more of a target. It makes him seem more important than Assimi Goïta or of Chani, who is the president of Niger. And you kind of put a target on people, when you give them so much attention and you do all of this adoration and raving that we're doing about him. And it also inflates his importance. Not that he is not extremely important, but definitely don't want to create any different impressions about our leaders than people would ordinarily get. We need to normalize African leadership. We need to normalize African American leadership. It's a Pan-African leadership. We are just as capable of running a country as Donald Trump is. That's an easy.
But how do we do that?
Excuse me? How do we normalize?
Okay. Yeah. How do we normalize it? How do you define this normalization?
Well, you normalize it by essentially doing what we do. We are not racially charged, oriented people ourselves. That's other people's hang up, Racism is somebody else's hang up. If they were not perceiving our leaders as being a threat to them, then we would have normalization. That's all I'm saying. We would be able to act around the world as though we had good ideas and wonderful things to do for our populations, and we could go about that business as any other country does on a daily basis without the specter of somebody oohing and ahhing about everything that's going on in the country and acting like it's such a remarkable feat for a Black president or a Black woman in a country to run it any differently from any other person in the other part of the world. So normalizing in the sense that we are no different from other people,
But don't you think, Arthur, that maybe we should look at race a little bit? For example, right now, the European countries, France, Belgium, England, Italy, that there's so much damage in the Congo and throughout the continent. They're balking on reparations. They don't even want to give the Africans a nickel back for their pain and suffering. They don't want to return their property. So perhaps maybe we need to look at things as race sometimes to really put this thing into perspective and to force them to pay what has to be paid?
Yes, I'm not saying that anything should go unaddressed and unredressed as reparations should be, But we need to understand firstly that we've been doing this forever. We had great civilizations, since the beginning of time. We know how to run an empire. We know how to run a country. We know how to run a state. That's never been a question, except in the minds of some people who have racial orientation and racial precision, and they want to look at it as being an anomaly, So that was my point. We just can't get overly hung up into what other people think of us. And I think that that's where we're going. Just quickly back to TikTok, and I want to say that this is the Muslim Street. It's a program that you can plug into that will give you a different perspective than anything else that you will hear anywhere else, except in snippets and bits. But we're going to give you a full dose of what it is that we think is important, what I know that you want to hear as being important. Like right now, what's going on with TikTok, as we were stating earlier, China is selling out. I can't put it any other way. China is selling out African people, African American people. They're selling out young people. They're selling out people who want and are making money off of ByteDance and their enterprise that they call TikTok. They are going to sell this under duress to Donald Trump and some of the owners of BlackRock and some of the other players who were involved in this hijacking of TikTok, and the Chinese are going to let it happen. I really think the Chinese should reconsider. They should reconsider the sale of TikTok to anyone. Like I said before, a few years ago, when TikTok looked like it was going to be forced off the spectrum and forced out of social media access in the US, 75 million users across the United States. I mean, we only got 330 million people in the US.
Right. So
75
that's
million.
I saw you made a point there. So I think that the reason why they're wanting to sell TikTok was because of security reasons, being that they wanted the US to hold the power and in the way that TikTok sends out its information. So in regards to security breaches, selling the data and all of that. So where do you think that TikTok should give the power to, or whom they should give their power
Good
to?
question.
It's not that TikTok ever wanted to give that power away. It's that is it's something called a red herring that many of us people who are a little bit older than you characterize. It's really it's something that really doesn't exist. There's never been a threat that TikTok could offer or that TikTok inherently has. What they're saying is that the Chinese have information and data on you and all the other TikTok users, me and everybody else, and that they are going to nefariously do something with this data at some point, and it is going to affect the national security of the country just because they are in possession of that information.
I agree. So in the red herring aspect, so which simply means to distract or mislead.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
quite familiar.
yeah,
So basically, the communication and the way they disperse it or try to almost like a scare tactic. Like for
yeah.
example, you mentioned something important. A lot of people when they said that TikTok was going to get banned, we
Mhm.
a lot of people were afraid that they would lose their way to communicate and sell
Sure.
their products and communicate with those, especially coming outside of the pandemic. That was a way that we connected as a people.
Yeah, and they're going to lose it. They're going to lose it. That's what's getting ready to happen because it is being sold. I think that the Chinese, if they would have been smart or if they are smart, they will let the forces of the market do what it's going to do. Let TikTok be cut off and let it be the responsibility of Donald Trump and the authorities in the US and let them take the responsibility for the backlash. I don't think the Chinese should just voluntarily give up their American audience. But it's not that, TikTok is huge. TikTok is international. TikTok is going to make money. It's going to continue to be owned by the Chinese at its base. And the algorithms are still going to be stored in China, and they're going to operate and function from China. The
Do you think
new,
that they
new
would?
owners of the new owners of ByteDance are essentially going to be the problem. They're the reason people are going to be upset with the changes they're getting ready to make. They're going to cut into the algorithms so that everything is edited. That's what they're doing this for. They're doing this so that they can control more of the assets that get to people in a way that you outlined a little bit earlier. It's because of what you're communicating. It's because of the freedom of access and the freedom of expression that you have, that is what the Trump administration and even some of the Biden administration, because Biden was about to cut into it. He was still in office when they were getting ready to cut off TikTok. So let them cut it off. Let them cut it off and let them suffer the repercussions of what that means. The Chinese are going to be fine by public and popular demand. People are going to scream, and I think that the Chinese would be certainly in a better position if they allowed that to happen and then brought it back. But the Chinese are essentially saying, okay, we'll capitulate, and we'll go ahead and let this particular wing of our company be bought out by these people, and we'll take the money and run. I think it's a cop out on China's part, and I think we should call China out for what they're doing.
What do you think about this, Doc? That is, China's basically saying that, listen, if we do not make some reforms that President Trump require us to do, then we're going to be completely isolated from this market. And if that occurs, someone else can create a new platform. Now, if they develop a new platform, that means TikTok, that is controlled by the central government of China, will be isolated from this market. So isn't it a between a rock and a hard place?
Well, not really. I mean, the Chinese can develop another format. There are a number of different businesses that operate in this country that are Chinese in their orientation. And
what about TikTok, though? This is a different thing. This is like a communication thing.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what it is, whether it's Huawei or it's the Chinese right now are developing in China an entirely laptop-based, telephone-based system, all the way through to social media and internet and everything that entails. And they're doing this in the global South, and they're doing it with a customer base that's way larger than the American market. Even at 75 million people using TikTok in the US is still a drop in the bucket to the size and expansion of what the owners, the true owners of TikTok represent. The only thing that gives TikTok value is that you are free to do and say what you want to do and say. And that is going to be limited severely once this platform is purchased. That is why they're buying the platform. They're buying the platform so that they can make sure that Minister Farrakhan isn't on the format. Make sure that people aren't addressing Black progressive ideas on the format. They're making sure nobody says anything against Donald Trump or Biden on that kind of format. They're trying to make sure that they control narrative, and they're going to use the purchase of this and other media that they can control to really regulate that narrative. Now, the only thing we have to really consider to be a free voice or a place of free speech is something that Elon Musk owns, on Twitter and on X, because that's a very free flowing format right now. But Facebook, Instagram, I mean, they're already pretty captured and pretty subdued, and that's why people were so interested in the TikTok platform in the first place. So we can talk about that more as we head back over to African issues. Did you know that the African American market is a $1.6 trillion market? This is the Muslim street, and we are, we're about 25 after the hour right now. But
Mr. Mobley, may I say something?
yes, you can. Please.
Yeah. So you said something, and I read in the comments, someone said, well, where does our community, what is something that we can do, or what are some of the questions that we can ask, or even negotiate? I think we as a community have to focus on, for one, the national security terms, the large investment firms, and also the people where we have to appoint those who can advocate on our behalf successfully and ask these key questions for transparency, asking how can we marginalize, the creators discussions. For example, if you notice on TikTok, a lot of the dances, or when artists have a new song, you'll see that we'll jump on the trend and we'll create a new dance and we'll help their mainstream and help their songs and streaming. However, we're not getting paid for these things. So making sure that we actually monetize our dollar and keep the dollar, the black dollar and wealth within our communities, and not necessarily pouring into others all the time, but actually coming together as a people. That's what I would say we can do. So
Well,
asking for economic equity. So making sure that they still have visibility, and making sure we are talking about the censorship.
Well, definitely, it's a free market. That's what a format like TikTok and X can create. That's what Facebook started out as. Then they started censoring everybody and taking people's posts down and doing all kinds of crazy stuff that Zuckerberg was involved in. I don't know how these people ever even get into business. They don't know anything about running a business. I'm sorry to say, you know. But I look at Zuckerberg, and it's just such a waste. I mean, this guy has $50 billion at his disposal at any given time. He could actually take over the entire media scene in America if he wanted to. It doesn't cost $1 billion to start a network. You could start CNN, NBC, ABC, CBS, each one of them for less than $1 billion. I know, but this guy's sitting there with $50 billion at any one time. He could have us stuck on his social media platform for everything. We'd be watching for news and sports and entertainment and just glued to Facebook if he wanted to if he was a smart businessman, but he's not. And X, and with what Musk is doing is essentially he is going to corner the market on the people like those in our audience who just want to be able to say what they want to say. You want to be free to say what you want to say. Hillary Clinton and John Kerry were complaining a few years ago. They were running around saying, "Oh, we're losing control of the narrative. We're losing control of the narrative." Well, you're losing control of the narrative because you never had it, but it is being amplified through things that you don't control. So they're trying to claw that control back. And that's why they want TikTok. They want to control. How many times have you seen Zuckerberg drugged before the Congress, sitting there like a deer in the headlights, looking crazy as people are grilling him, asking him stupid questions about, his content. None of the other networks have ever been treated that way. And they do all kinds of things. They got racy stuff on during all kinds of hours, and but nobody's been called on a carpet for that. But they're afraid of social media. They're afraid of you. They're afraid of us, and they're afraid of us having access that has become too powerful. The reason the revolution in Africa has advanced so quickly is because of social media. The reason we've had such dynamic shifts in power with the growth of the global South and the BRICS countries is because of social media. So it's okay that those things happen outside of the US. But what people here believe they need to control is the narrative inside the US. We used to call it news and information for internal consumption. It was only for internal consumption. We'd hear that all the time. And so, wait a minute, this is a international media. Some of it's going to leak out, but they're concerned about what the mindset is in the U.S. and what is being internally consumed at any given time. So that's what they're still trying to control. And I think we need to run those roadblocks wherever we see them. Wherever we see those things being formed, they should not ever again control the access to the narrative,
So would you even recommend independent audits or even community oversight to ensure that the algorithm doesn't continue to suppress that content or even activism?
Well, you can ask for those things. It doesn't mean that you're going to get them. I think that the government doesn't allow you the means to audit any of these companies. There's no oversight. The FCC has been shrunk down to where you could drown it in a bathtub. It used to be a very powerful organization. The FCC was judges. They were part of the judicial branch of the country, and they were the ones who were trying to make sure that licenses were fairly administered. They were fairly parceled out to all segments of the population. We're supposed to have a certain segment. I mean, we should have had 15% of the stations, FM and AM stations and television stations should be owned today by African Americans if the FCC was doing its rightful job, because that's our segment of the population, just giving you that as a base. But because they are not on their job and because they've abdicated that job and stepped all the way back, the broadcasters get to do what they want. They get to attach social media. They get to run social media where they can. They continue to control and hold on to content libraries full of all kinds of content going back to the beginning of television and radio they own. So we need to have our own, and we need to be building those assets, and we need to be finding ways to do that. And that's a little bit of what we're doing here, but this is the Muslim street, and that's how we roll on the Muslim street. We make sure that the traffic keeps moving, and that we certainly stay a part of it. But my last word on TikTok was that China needs to be called out for what they're doing, and we need to be complaining to China about this sale that they're getting ready to do that's going to put TikTok essentially in the hands of those people who have never been interested in hearing from particularly and especially Black youth and Black people. And they're going to do everything that they can to cut out those messages and those elements that they see. So, which leads me back again to Africa. Our salvation for what we want to do is in Africa. We need networks there. If we're broadcasting from Africa and that's what we're doing right now with Lance. Come to think of it. But we need to be on formats and platforms that we also own and control. So we don't have all of these dropouts and the little fuzzy sounds and those things that I know, Lance, you don't have anything to do with. But there's a lot of cable running under the Atlantic Ocean, and
Right.
those cables have been attacked and usurped. And for a while, all the internet was out in Africa, in West Africa. Just was that about a year ago or so, or a little more than a year ago?
Yeah. Everything was shut down.
Yeah.
It was terrible.
Yeah.
Yes.
And everybody knows that that's sabotage. So we have to get to a situation where we administer our own technology. It is worldwide and it is secured by people who look like us and think like us and are going to say, "Oh no, 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 we're not letting that happen." We know how to we know how to switch this and we know how to move this over here, and so that there's no interruption, even if there is a problem in some kind of an anchor drags on the bottom of the ocean and snares a cable. It's not going to take everybody off of social media as it did before. So it's just too important. These lifelines and these communication lines are too important to us as well as they are to Europeans and to people in this country. We need everything the U.S. has and more, and we're building that right now. China, India, Russia, the global South, Indonesia, they're all doing these kinds of things, and we want to make sure that we are also in the thick of those. How are we doing on time, brother?
Okay, we're 6 minutes over the hour, and take it where you want to take it. I know there's more to say. No rush, but we'll wrap it down as you feel.
Yeah.
I can go on for 10 hours, so you're good.
If I could just say one more thing, and then
Please,
that's
say two
it.
more
I'm so
things.
sorry.
Two more things.
Please,
Okay.
please.
Yeah,
All
take your
right,
time.
so
Let it flow. I'm in no
okay,
rush.
okay, perfect. Something I found out we did with Instagram, even and another platform, which was called Musically. We came across this issue before with Musically, and then that's why they created TikTok, because we asked for things such as public equity and transparency reports. So meaning it calls for the U.S. ownership to release a short public report showing, how the content from Black creators or creators as a whole compared to others outside of our region or
Mhm.
our country, even calling for a creator advisory panel. Even it's low cost and aligns with other platforms. For example, Meta, Facebook, and Messenger. We had a security breach there, and the last thing was asking for the training access. For example, doing different workshops between the communities and between the directors of the divisions between TikTok, Meta, Facebook, and empowering. And I found that to be successful and actually securing stability for the creators, the ones who do it full time. You have creators who focus on music, focus on activism, focus on even giving back to their communities.
Mhm.
So just calling for simple things like that and it actually working and proving that if we ask for it and actually stick to our message and what we believe as a people, it can actually make a change and make a difference.
What if they don't do it? What if they don't listen to you?
If they don't do it, we do what we did before. We create as Dr. White mentioned, we create another platform. They lost Musically, they lost Dub Smash. I mean, it's the same thing. Going back to the Cadillac company, Cadillac didn't listen, and look what happened. We took over. We put our dollar elsewhere. We put our time elsewhere. That's what we have to do.
Just again, we don't have the regulatory bodies at the national level that police these things as we used to have with the FCC. I mean, it used to be with the FCC. If there was a station in XYZ market in Nashville or wherever, Detroit, and they weren't doing what they needed to do. They weren't hiring Black people. They had a bunch of people on from the Ku Klux Klan every week, and they were running programs like we're doing here, and they're just out in the open talking crazy. Not like us. We're very rational here, but if those people were doing that, we could, and we had the facilities and the apparatus at the FCC. We could file uh, complaints. We could file informal objections. If we wanted to do something stronger, we could file a petition to deny their license renewal the next time that license renewal came up. We could even go as far as filing a petition to revoke their license. These were all administered within the FCC. And believe me, broadcasters were terrorized and deathly afraid of being challenged that way. And when we do it, we would get very significant results. So
but how about this?
If you don't, absent having some kind of a police watchman organization at the federal level with teeth to go after and stop these things from happening, we're just talking about free market issues. And we can always, vote with our feet like we do with Cadillac or like we did with the Hennessy's and Courvoisiers and change behavior that way, because we've got that $1.6 trillion market here. African Americans spend $1.6 trillion a year. And that's way more than a lot of countries. So we can do some things in that area. I'm just saying that unless you have also the teeth of government and you have some semblance of somebody in higher places who back you and want to see you succeed, it's still going to be tough, is what I'm saying.
But it seems to me, Art, that the group under the age of 45, they receive most of their information, 80%, 90% of their information on the social platforms.
Absolutely.
So therefore, if the government locks us out, so what? We have enough platforms and enough influencers to get our story out, to make money, and to really do the things we have to do. I don't know if we really need the government agencies and regulators as we used to. It's a new time. I'd like to hear you and Ms. Harper speak to this, and maybe even Lance. He's right in the mix.
Absolutely. Would either of you care to respond to that?
Yeah, I got interrupted with a quick phone call, so I was away for a second. If you can just repeat the statement, and I'll be glad to jump in.
Well, what I said is that I don't think we need government regulators to govern us anymore in this line of communication, because the age group from 45 down, they get 90% of their information on different social platforms. So therefore, if the government, the United States government, don't want to play ball with us, it doesn't mean they can quiet us. We have options now, not like we had in the 1990s and 1980s.
Yes. Well, on that note, I would say that it's imperative that we have our own. Yes, we use the platforms, but they don't belong to us. And I know this for a fact, even tonight, when I was making some comments in the comments section to respond to a family who's here, certain comments YouTube blocked.
Oh, yeah?
And they watch. And so they still curtail and censor us, and they play tricks with us. With my old platform that was hijacked, which had 117,000 followers on it and froze at that number, I found out that in actuality, I had about 895,000 going up near 1 million, right? And they would hold the hits back, and gradually the money I made went down. And they couldn't break me because I started back up again and continue to go on, because this is something that I do from the heart and out of the love for my people. You know, Dr. White has been to my home in Orlando countless times, and he knows the room that I set up for it was always open for anyone who wanted to speak truth. And they don't like that when you can't be compromised. They don't like that when you may make a little money and they take it away and you still continue. They say, what is this guy made of? So we have to have our own. And I wish that maybe one of the great African leaders from the motherland, or, put something together. We need it in-house because we're still being heavily censored, and it's a way to monitor us, which we move with no fear as Black people for the most part, but they monitor us to see who are the leaders and who are the ones who are unafraid to speak the truth. And this is why they put out just as much decadence online on a lower desire, on a lower level, to keep the men and the women confused, titillated, seduced. And there is a heavy push, and I would tell you, maybe many people won't notice it. I'll let Sister Harper talk. But in Africa, on TikTok, there are many creators who are encouraged to push lesbian activity amongst the young girls. They push this heavily, and they make it as entertainment and short bits of entertainment that, for example, you have a skit where you have a guy talking to a young lady and she kind of kisses him on the cheek and walks away and goes around the corner to kiss a woman. There's a lot of that right now. They're doing it on so many different levels. They're pushing the LGBTQ stuff, and many people are grabbing it because they feel it's liberation, because in America, this is what they're doing, and we can be free to do what we do, because there's a lot of that going on out here. So the focus is, the stimulation is to take us away from the liberation of us globally. We can have fun, we can tell jokes, we can be entertained, but a great percentage of that has to be the work that needs to be done to repair us, because we're still in a state of chaos when you really look at it. And as long as we suck up the bad stuff online, they have no problem with it. They get to surveil us, and they get to derail us into things that take us away from the ultimate mission.
Absolutely. And that's exactly why they want to have control of things like TikTok, because whatever's popular, whatever is out there that most of us are plugged into, that's where they want to be, to control the narrative. And that's why for years in broadcasting, we always called it programming. It is programming. Programming means more than just the superficial idea. When you think about that word, it is actually programming people. You're programming people as well as providing programming in the course of your broadcast operations. So you're telling people how to act and what to do and how to behave, all at the same time. You're sharing ideas with them. So again, if we were in control of those things, we would be sharing things differently. 50% of the traffic on the internet right now is pornography. And it is why the blocks were built in places like China, because China didn't want all of that pornography into the country. The Israeli group out of Tel Aviv, they produce more pornography than anybody. They're the major purveyors of pornographic material. So there are things going on behind the scenes, as Lance just pointed out, that African people are pretty much in a different mindset. We're Muslims, we're Christian, we're definitely African thinkers, and those things are not so much of interest to us, but they're definitely being pushed onto us. And so I think that's an excellent point, and one that we definitely have to be concerned about. I want to just say this in closing: Ibrahim Traoré and what he's going through, as we mentioned earlier at the top of the program, are critical. They're talking in that country about elections. We had a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about how Africa is moving towards a serious step away from democracy, away from the idea of voting and doing the things that we do here in the U.S. And it is getting a lot of traction there, because that is a traditional African way of leading. You had chiefs and you have people who are monarchs. I mean, the kings and queens, those were done in Africa long before they were done anywhere else, before Europe ever even thought or heard of a king or queen. That was something that was spoke of and presented in Africa. There was no such thing as a pharaoh, because that was actually a king or a queen. That is a Greek word that was imposed on on African people. But Traoré is in a situation where if he ran for the office of president in his country, no doubt he would win that election. If he tried to step away at this point and said, "I don't even want to lead anymore. I want to let somebody else become president," the people would be upset. And there are such things as people who are kept in office by popular demand. And because they love their people, they're concerned about what's happening. That is the kind of leadership that we need. And as that grows in Africa, I think we have a better chance of creating the systems that we need so that we can flourish as a people internationally. We're just going to shift our base over there and just begin to do more from the that side of the Atlantic. So, brother, you can take us out, Brother Scurv.
Once again, I'm running my mouth on a voicemail, talking to one of the guys for construction. So I'm sorry for leaving for a second, but yeah, you caught me again. So talk to me, brother.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're just wrapping up. And I wanted to also just mention real quickly, we need to be very, very concerned about and watchful about what's going on in the Sudan. 500,000 children have been killed or starved in Sudan over the past several months. Those of us in the Darfur 23, we need to make some serious arrangements so that we can go back to the Sudan and once again renew some efforts. And I'll have more discussions with Malik about that to see if we can make some things happen.
I just want to mention also with that is that half of the population of the Sudan right now are starving. All right. And there continues to be strikes on civilians against drone strikes, American drones. All right, by both sides. And also what's interesting is that they have been finding a number of Ukrainian and Colombian mercenaries.
Yes.
That's been there, that's been fighting on the side of the rebels. So that's something that to be looked at. I also want to make mention that, we're so happy
you should say on the side of the terrorists.
That's right. Yes, on the side of the terrorists. Absolutely. And that's something that's very interesting because it ties in what is taking place to Europe, South America, and to Africa. Mm-hmm. And we can't dismiss that. And again, the UN is not saying much about this. They're keeping it very, very quiet. However, BRICS are. BRICS is saying tremendous. I do want to say, lastly, that we're very happy to have Ms. Harper on. I think her statements are right on, pointed.
Yes.
And I saw a number of comments that said basically, go ahead. And we're very happy. I don't know if she's still listening, but
yes, I am. I can hear you. Thank you, Doctor, and thank you for
they're very, very happy to hear you, and you're welcome anytime. And secondly, don't forget to go to Amazon or go to your local bookstore to get Blacklisted. Brother Mobley, you did a tremendous job. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, brother. I appreciate that. And this is the Muslim Street. Again, the place where all of us come together. We bring together Pan-Africans. We bring together, all of the diverse backgrounds that we share as African-oriented people and people from Africa throughout the diaspora. And it's a Pan-African thing here on the Muslim Street every week at this time. At 7 o'clock Eastern, 7:30 Eastern, I should say. So looking forward to being with you next week.
Yes. Thank you, Brother Lance. And, at some stage, we're all going to have to get to Lance's place and have a little retreat. And
I would love that.
I got some ideas and some engineers, and we got some things that can take you to a level where we're not going to be contained by other people's systems.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Look, it's all here. It's all here. And you'll be quite surprised when you come. You're not going to want to leave when you get here, and you don't have to.
Is that Florida or Ghana?
Ghana.
Oh,
We're talking about Ghana.
Ghana.
We're not talking about Babylon. We're talking about you. We're talking about heaven.
I don't even want to go
There
to
you go.
Florida now season.
All right, fellas. We wrapped up about 3 times.
Right? And Sister Harper, we have to get you on my show sometime. I need to hear your voice, and you'll be so effective. So we'll talk about that for sure.
Absolutely. Good to see you, sister and brother Wade.
Okay, everybody. Have a wonderful night. And like I said, another brilliant show. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Yes. Walaikum salam.